This episode is brought to you by FXX and Hulu. An all-new season of Futurama is back, blending heartfelt moments with razor-sharp humor while accidentally saving the day. The Planet Express crew is back, defying gravity and common sense. From the creator of The Simpsons comes 10 new episodes where the romance is hotter, the threats are bigger, and the action hits harder. Don't miss the all-new season of Futurama. Watch it Mondays on FXX or stream it on Hulu.
Welcome back to another edition of the Disney Dish Podcast with Jim Hill. It's me, Len Testa, and this is our show for the week of Schmurz Day, September 22nd, 2025. On the show today, we ask Jim Hill when he learned to scuba dive and explore the origin of the Southern phrase, fix your face, plus new surveys and listener questions. Then in our main segment, Imagineer Jim Shull joins us to wrap up the story of how Disney California Adventure brought Cars Land to life. Let's get started by bringing in the man who turned subtitles on for everything one day and never looked back. It's Mr. Jim Hill. Jim, how's it going?
It's going well, Len, and clearly you've tapped into the home security system here at Nancy and my place, and which, given that we're entering those crisp fall months, I have to get back in the habit of wearing pants, especially going down to get the mail.
Too much information.
Yeah. I've been wearing shirts all summer, but like every time I think I've said this in the show before, but like in the mornings during the fall and the winter, when I go to get dressed every morning, I will ask Laurel, what am I wearing today? And she'll be like, pants. I'm like, yeah, like a sucker. And she will respond, chump pants. Anyway. All right, folks. And let's do a quick shout out to our subscribers. Thanks to everyone who subscribes to the show over at patreon.com/JimHillMedia, including Clay Benton, John Hernandez, Neil Pilarski, Michael Toppy, and Alicia McCallan. Jim and Jim, these are the Imagineers looking to boost holiday occupancy at some Disney value resorts by applying the not-so-scary holiday idea from the parks. The upcoming overlay, Disney's Not-So-All-Star Movies, will retheme the existing buildings to less successful Disney franchises such as the Alamo, Home on the Range, and Mars Needs Moms. True story.
Woof. Okay.
It's a seasonal thing. All right. On to the news, folks. The Disney Dish News is sponsored by UnlockMagic.com from our friends at DVCRentalStore.com. We got a survey this week that asks whether you bought discounted holiday party tickets, and if you want to answer yes, now's the time to visit UnlockMagic.com. It's got regular Disney theme park tickets and special event tickets with 10% off for things like Mickey's Very Merry Christmas Party and the Jollywood Nights. So if you're planning to head to Orlando, visit UnlockMagic.com right now to save big. All right, on to the news. And Jim Shull, we're going to start with you on this one.
Okay.
The replacement for Tomorrowland's cool ship structure is in place now, and I've got photos of it in the show notes. Thanks to our friends at wdwmagic.com for the photos. And Jim, you designed the original cool ship in Tomorrowland, right? I would love to hear your take on this design.
Well, as I look at the photographs of the windows, look like they're ordering windows. Yeah. They kind of look like they borrowed from the McDonald's arches.
It's definitely got a swoopy, curvy 60s vibe to it, right?
It does. It's interesting that they do this. It seems like they're, well, a couple of things. I miss the water. I do not see the water play. It seems to be gone forever.
Yeah.
So take that as a knock on it. I guess they must really need to sell a lot of cola products and food. I'll be interested to see what the menu of this is going to be, but
right.
The location is the same. So, evidently this is a replacement in kind for the old, dearly departed cool ship.
Now, what intrigues me about this design, though, is, well, it looks like you place your order and then there's an area you step into undercover, sort of either a shade structure to keep you out of the Central Florida rain, which I guess somebody actually paid attention to what goes on in the Magic Kingdom.
Yeah, a little bit of shade there's definitely welcome.
It's also interesting to look at the architectural style because they're, again, leaning very much into that kind of early 1971 Tomorrowland vibe where everything is white with a little bit of teal and red. So, I think the old days of the science fiction future that never was truly is gone. Now, overall, it looks good.
I think a couple of things here. Jim Shull, I think you're right. The current architecture has the swooping curves that sort of mimic the original 1971 Tomorrowland, but also the stylized spires that directly relate to Space Mountain.
This is true. It's a happy place.
Yeah, it is. It's a happy place. The other thing is, I mean, there are definitely structural similarities with the new version of Cold Ship and the one you designed, Jim Shull. Like that little covered area that you walk through that is not technically indoors, but it's shaded. Like you can see the callback to that in this, right?
Well, it's very early here on the West Coast, Len, and
Yeah.
give me until at least 9 a.m. before I can answer you on that one. Fair. But I'll give it to you.
Yeah, I think I like it. It looks good. The color scheme fits in, and I mean the 1971 Tomorrowland architecture is at this point a classic of theme park design. If they go back to that and keep that, that would be fine, right?
Indeed. It seems to have been sticking the needle back on what made Tomorrowland so memorable and great and classic. So, points to the Imagineers for bringing this one to life.
All right, fantastic. Also, a bit of sad news. The Gino the gorilla passed away at Disney's Animal Kingdom last week. He was 44 and had been part of the Gorilla Falls Exploration Trail for almost 30 years since the park had opened. I didn't realize that, but that's a really long time. The typical lifespan for a gorilla in the wilds around 35 years, and it's rare for them to reach 50, even in captivity. So Gino had a good long life, thanks to the Disney zookeepers at Animal Kingdom. So yeah, a little bit sad, but he had 14 kids, I believe.
Yeah, now he was the resident silverback, wasn't he? Mm-hmm. Or
I think so. Yeah. So I don't know how they're going to handle that in the park now.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to see who emerges as the new dominant gorilla, so to speak. Okay, another reason to go visit Gorilla Falls.
Exactly. Also, Disney announced last week 2 new Florida resident discounts. One is a $70 per day 3-day ticket offer. The other one is resort discounts starting at around 18% off rack rates at value resorts. I note in doing some research that these are almost exactly the same terms and dates as last year, maybe a couple of % better in terms of discounts. The interesting thing is this, like new numbers from Visit Orlando suggest that Central Florida tourism remains strong through the early and middle parts of summer. So June 2025 tourist tax collection was up 10%, which set a new record for June, and July was up 11%, also a new record for that month. Disney Cruise Line passenger numbers out of Port Canaveral still above 90%. I mean, everything in Orlando, at least through the end of July, looked way better than other parts of the country. So I think these discounts, taken into context being the same as last year, Disney's not panicking, but they're pulling the levers, I guess, that you need to pull to get enough people into the parks.
Wow, that is fascinating, especially when you counter that with the news coming out of Vegas, where
yeah. I mean, basically anywhere. There's a handful of cities in the U.S. that are doing okay, but the vast majority, 2/3, 75% are doing less business this year.
Okay.
Also, Disney announced candlelight processional narrators last week with dining packages going on sale October 14th. There are a few new narrators: Constance Wu, Jennifer Gardner, Leslie Uggams, Henry Winkler, Lauren Daigle,
okay.
Joey Smallbone, and Brie Larson, and Cheryl Lee Ralph are all new. I note that Neil Patrick Harris is not on this list, and that's because he's doing a Broadway show called Art this year with James Corden and Bobby Cannavale. Yeah.
Literally just opened and got great reviews.
Yeah, fantastic. And isn't Bobby Cannavale also in this season's Only Murders in the Building?
I want to say yes. You're right. The Bob family. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, he's Bobby Cannavale is having a moment. That's fantastic. Good for him. All right. Also, over at Universal Orlando, Universal announced a lengthy 10-month refurbishment for Jurassic Park River Adventure and Islands of Adventure from January through November of 2026. And Jim Shull, I want to get your thoughts on this because this seems to be a much more than regular maintenance schedule. Touring plans, tracks ride closures going back over a decade. And since 2011, this ride's annual maintenance has never taken more than about 35 days. And in the show notes, I actually put the database dump where we track all of these going back to 2011. So Jim Shull, is this a once every 15 years big, ride system maintenance thing, or do you think more it's a ride retheming?
Well, my fingers are definitely crossed that the amount of time that this is going to be down may signal that Orlando's about to get a copy of what was built there in Hollywood at Universal City Studios Hollywood.
You think?
I hope so, because upgrade the dinosaurs, put in the aquarium, do all that neat stuff, and really bring that ride up. I mean, it's a great ride. I know the people who worked on it, and it's a fabulous, wonderful ride. But when it was rehabbed and reimagined in Hollywood, it needed it. And the same applies to Orlando. So yes, fingers crossed, we're going to be seeing very shortly a really big fish tank with a really angry fish in it.
That would be fantastic.
To back up what Mr. Shull is saying here, if you go back to when Jurassic Park, the ride, closed on the lower lot of Universal Hollywood, that was September of 2018. And then 10 months later, Jurassic World, the ride, opened up.
Right.
So
yeah.
It's literally the same amount of time. So
there you go, Jim Hill. All right.
That's anecdotal, but
it's it's an exact clone of Florida's an exact clone of Hollywood. So again, we don't know until we know, but it sure does look like there's a reason for hope.
That's fantastic. All right, well that is definitely something to look forward to. Thank you guys. All right, other Walt Disney World news: the Paddlefish restaurant was robbed last week by a man who used scuba gear to swim through Disney Springs, get undressed, and rob the manager's office after Paddlefish had closed. The man took between $10,000 and $20,000 in cash, put the scuba outfit back on, and swam away. Thankfully, no weapons were involved and nobody was hurt, but police still haven't caught him or even identified a suspect.
Len, I'm sorry. I have water in my ear. Could you repeat that story,
exactly.
please?
You said swimmer's ear or something happened here. Yeah.
There we go.
But you got that at the YMCA, right, Jim?
Absolutely, yes. Nancy teaches water aerobics. There's no way I could have caught a flight that would get me back here that fast.
I'm looking at this online, and I didn't realize how big the water system is that connects Disney Springs to the rest of property. Like, it's not just a little lake. That goes on for a while, and it's very, very hard to track people going in and out of that. Like, it's almost impossible, right?
Yeah, and what's kind of interesting, at least from what I've been hearing from friends down at the resort, is they are reviewing, security footage, not only from Saratoga Springs.
First thing I thought, just like somebody's got a studio at Saratoga Springs.
And that's the thing. Going through all of the cameras over there to the effect of, this is monk territory, Len.
Yeah. No. This is somebody who clearly knew what they were doing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. My first question here was Paddlefish? Because Boathouse is right next door and probably does like 3 or 4 times the business, right?
Yeah.
But then I remembered my friend Ricky. He works at Boathouse as a server, and I feel like that encounter would have had a vastly different ending for the perpetrator. So for those of you who don't know, Ricky is a 6'4" bodybuilder, and I am secure enough to say he is objectively eye candy. Also the nicest, hardworking guy you ever want to meet. Like if Michelangelo finished the statue of David, stood back and said, I could do better, right? Imagine a young Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson wanted nothing more in life than to bring you cocktails and feed you desserts until you were happy, right? That's Ricky. Again, wonderful guy. But and here's my Ricky story to go along with this too, right? So I was waiting in line for the restroom at Boathouse one night, a couple months ago, and these 2 women were also waiting next to me, and one of them was older, and one of them was, like the mom or the aunt of the younger one, and the old wonder was telling the younger one, Kaylee, honey, you are at dinner with your husband, the father of your child. You cannot be looking at the waiter like that with your man sitting right next to you. I about had to tell you to close your mouth. Now go in that bathroom, pull yourself together, and fix your face before you go back to the table. And I was like, I'd never heard the phrase fix your face before. And I was like, does that mean like touch up your makeup? Or does that mean like fix your gaze? I'm not sure what that means, but if anyone who is Southern here and knows what fix your face means, let me know. But I was like, she was like, you are at dinner with your husband, the father of your child. Wow. You cannot be making eyes at Ricky like that.
All right. So, you got to wonder is there a secondary meaning there for fix your face, sort of like,
I don't know. I
bless her heart.
Yeah. I mean, I lived in North Carolina for 20 something years, but I don't remember ever hearing that. So if anyone knows, let me know. All right. Last little bit of news. It was a great week for pop star Sabrina Carpenter. Last week, we learned that Sabrina's opening Coachella 2026 is the headliner for day one. And she's also going to host the Muppet Show's 50th anniversary special sometime in 2026, according to Variety. Jim Hill, does this special have the chance to relaunch the Muppets? I mean, if you're going to relaunch, Sabrina Carpenter is about as hot as it gets, right?
Well, wait, it gets hotter because I don't know if you saw the trades in the past week or so listed the production company behind this and Seth Rogen's.
Seth Rogen, yeah. I mean, the writers for this thing and the producers are top notch, yeah.
Yeah, and in fact, what's especially interesting about this is that Alex Timber is supposed to direct, and Alex Timber, I think we've talked about this on the show, was the guy who back when Disney Theatrical was thinking about bringing the Muppets to Broadway, he was the guy. Well, first of all, he directed the Peter Pan prequel, the Neverland Show. Very, very hot director at the time, but he was the guy who directed like the 15, 20-minute long test they actually did on stage at the New Amsterdam Theater with the notion, and at that time it was decided the Muppets just don't work the way Avenue Q works. You can't have the performers on stage and see the Muppets. But the fact that Seth Rogen's involved, Alex Timber's involved, and now Sabrina Carpenter, the insinuation here is 50th anniversary special. If it gets the numbers they think they're going to get, the show comes back.
I mean, to quote kids these days, is this a soft launch of the relationship or the reboot of the Muppets? I think so. Yeah.
There we go.
I mean, not only that, but I mean, it's coming at the time when 2026 is when we get the Muppets take over Rock and Roller Coaster too, right?
Indeed.
I would use the phrase "everything's coming up Millhouse," but it's it's wrong franchise.
There we go.
All right, on to surveys. And Jim Shull, I want to get your take on this question. We mentioned in the news segment that Disney Cruise Line is doing fantastic numbers out of Port Canaveral. And listener Michael Underland sent in a DCL survey about his trip on the Disney Wish. And it has this question I don't think I've seen yet. And the question is this. Which of the following, if any, are reasons you chose the Disney Wish for your upcoming Disney Cruise Line vacation? And I'm not going to go through all the options because there's like 20 of them. But the options include 6 different answers related to DCL variety, like the ship, the itinerary, and stuff like that. 5 on schedule and logistics, 3 on itineraries specifically, and only 2 on price. So, Jim Shull, what are these response options and the number of them by category?
Well, we're talking about income qualified, so that I guess explains why they're not going to really ask if you're reading this about whether you can afford it. You're the wrong customer, so that explains why that one's so low. As far as convenience, I think that's going to be a lot of it because people usually, again, we have a very, very busy life. I'm helping. Well, my son is buying a new home now, and the hoops you have to jump through to buy new homes now, and all the legal requirements. And people have a life, so the easier Disney can make it for you to go and enjoy their cruise, that definitely gives you a good reason to go. Yeah. So I think the departure was close to my home. I mean,
and I could easily drive to the port of departure. Yeah, right?
That's an interesting one to me because typically, departure point, people will make a day trip of 250 miles away from the park or a port. And is that enough of a market? So that one kind of surprises me that they'd ask that question. But I think, again, the whole purpose of any one of these questionnaires is they ask a lot of questions. Some of them they know really aren't that important, but you have to add enough questions so that people kind of dance over, ignore the really important ones that Disney wants you to give an answer to.
Right. I think that all makes sense. The thing that I find interesting is if you look at the discounts that Disney announced, for Florida residents, last week as well, it seems like Walt Disney World is really leaning into the one-day drive market, not only for parks, but also for DCL. So like if they can get people within a day's drive, that's, between 60 and 100 million people, roughly within a one-day drive of the parks and the ports. That could be enough to get them through to 2028 when we start 2027, 2028, when we start to see the new attractions open. right?
Yeah, indeed. But it's also part of the fascination I have with Walt Disney World. When it opened, it was the vacation kingdom of the world. They were advertising, come on down, play golf, and get a sunburn. That was basically the entire thing because they only had one little park. And the cruise line was a bit of a risk. It wasn't really connected to the park as much as it is today, where, hey, come down, do a couple of days of the park, have the rest of your vacation on a cruise. And that speaks also to the fact that Florida has grown in population so much. I mean, good grief. In 71, there was nothing. It was my first trip down to Disney World for WDI, driving through, trying to get a meal. It was Howard Johnson's. That was
and Stuckey's.
And Stuckey's was closed. There wasn't that much there, but now it's a whole different world where you have major metropolitan cores that can feed into that market. So Disney is taking advantage of the fact there is a population base in Orlando and in Florida that simply wasn't there when the cruise line started.
Yeah. Well, when I lived in Florida early to mid 90s, Michelle and I would drive over on a Saturday to visit with our friends at the Adventurers Club. And it was an hour drive from Tampa over to Orlando. Now it's an hour drive just to get from Orlando to Davenport.
Yeah.
So much traffic. That area is so built up. So,
and it's an area that continue to try to expand the roads and create new interchanges. The poor departed Crossroads was, the Disney hangout because that's where the Goodens was, and Jungle Gyms. But they sacrificed that for an intersection, and but it doesn't seem to really make a difference.
No, I think the one thing that we've learned with Florida is if you build the roads, they'll fill up as fast as you can pave them. So.
Well, smaller cars are the answer.
Exactly. All right. Also, our friend Clint Babbitts is just back from Walt Disney World and writes in with his thoughts and the follow-up survey from Disney. My daughter and I both did the La Cava experience and Halloween party this trip. They're priced similarly, and for my $180, the La Cava experience with Christina won hands down. And I say this as someone who didn't really drink tequila until now, but my daughter really enjoys good tequila, so I could learn more about it. I was really impressed, and I'm already planning to do it again. And the survey that came along with this was really interesting. Jim Shull, I want to get your thoughts on these. The two questions that I saw, and they were in different parts of the survey, but I put them together here, were this. Which statement below best describes your primary reason for visiting Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party? I visited because of the theme of the party. I visited because I want to attend a special event in the Magic Kingdom. And I visited because special events are less crowded than a regular day in the parks, and it's easier for me to see and do everything I want. And the next follow-up question later in the survey for that was, if Not So Scary had not been occurring, would you still have visited a Walt Disney World theme park on the date that you did? So, Jim Shull, I suspect that these are your intent to visit questions for the party?
Yeah, they're really poking at the intent to visit. What does it take the guest, especially the guest who's been to Disney World before, what does it take them to move the needle? As we just said a moment ago, what does it take them to drive that hour drive, through Orlando to get to the park? It's something that moves the needle. What's interesting about this, though, is the second question, where it was, yes, I would have still visited the Walt Disney theme park on or around September the 14th.
Right.
Now, September 14th is a real interesting date, because it's after school is fully in session.
Right.
People have gone back to their lives, and yet, for some reason, September 14th or thereabouts, middle of that month, was a particular date of interest. I'd be curious to know what they were looking for by that question.
I note the second question, the one about visiting, Walt Disney World, if there wasn't a party, is basically the intent to visit question. But the first one, like, what was your primary reason for doing so, has options that say the party cannibalized a day ticket at the Magic Kingdom. So they're asking, like, did you make a special trip for this? And are we just shifting money from left pocket to right pocket? Or are we getting new money? And I think that's important for Disney to know.
Well, there's a lot of effort and a lot of expense. I mean, all those wrapped candies don't come free.
Exactly. The stickers don't wrap themselves, right?
This is true.
The next question, and I haven't seen this question before in a survey. It says, did you buy your Not So Scary Halloween Party ticket at a discount?
Well,
and my sense here is that Disney's tying the rest of the response to the price you paid for this? Like, do people who get discounted tickets end up more happy with the party than people who pay full price? Or is, the $15 discount or whatever meaningless?
It'd be interesting to look at a timing study. The people who go to the Not So Scary or Jollywood Nights, are they only coming to that event, or are they extending their day stay? In other words, are they showing up at the normal time to go to the Kingdom, but say, well, I added to my day this ticket for Not So Scary, so I'll add another 4 to 6 hours to my already very long, tiring day.
Right. Oh, that's a great point.
Yeah, look at that. Yeah. And that's going to be of potential interest.
Well, the other thing, and in fact, just sort of tying back to your earlier observation about the cruise line and tapping into the market there in Florida, I have to admit, I'd be intrigued to look at how many people come out for Mickey's Not So Scary who are Orlando locals versus people who've flown in.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That totally makes sense.
Well, again, we've talked about this on the show before. That in Disneyland, California, 80% of the guests are local. They're a day trip. They come, they wake up in their bed and they go home to stay in that same bed at night. Whereas in Orlando, back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, those were people who 80% were not local. They were flying from their home or traveling from their home to stay on property, whether it was a high drive or in a Disney hotel. But as we just said a moment ago, Orlando and Tampa, Jacksonville, all of the cities in Florida have grown so much that now there's a growing market that can support on their own these events, which makes suddenly Disney World more of a locals park than it ever was 20 or 30 years ago.
Oh, that's a great point. Yeah. There are a couple of questions later that I really like. The first one is this. If you had your day to do over again, would you purchase this Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween party? And it ranges from definitely would to definitely would not. I love this question because it sums up everything that you think about the party into one answer. I almost wish it wasn't a 5-point Likert scale. It was more like a binary yes/no, right? But yeah, this is basically the similar to the would you recommend this to a friend type thing, right? I love this question. I'd love to see the results for this too. By the way, if you happen to indicate that you're not sure you'll do the Halloween party again, you get a follow-up question that asks you why, and I've posted it here. And the responses range from I've been there, done that, to I didn't have enough time for everything, to it's too expensive. And some of those are unaddressable by Disney, right? So like if there's an option that says, my kids are now too old, or I've been there and done that, right? Like Disney can't do anything about that. But some of them are addressable, right? If the responses come back and say, there wasn't enough time to do everything, or it wasn't different enough from a regular day at the Magic Kingdom. Jim Shull, those are things that Disney can address, right?
Yeah, they can. And one of the interesting things that doesn't appear in the survey is weather. Somebody might say, well, I would have had a great time except for that hailstorm, or the blistering heat, or, my feet were tired. I mean, things like that. And some of that is just people don't think to put that in the questionnaire. And so, because they treat it as a given, but weather definitely is something that could affect your decision to whether you had a good or a bad time, whether it was worth the time and money or not.
That's a great point. The last question that I thought was super interesting was this. Which of these statements most closely resembles your opinion about these two aspects of the party? And the first response is the event entertainment is much more important than the trick-or-treating experience. And the last option, so all the different options, vary on that. Is the opposite. The event entertainment is much less important than the trick-or-treating experience. So this is Disney trying to figure out, of these two things, of entertainment and trick-or-treating, which is most important to you? And I like that because it allows Disney to focus on what's more important, right? If everyone says the entertainment is super important, we get more entertainment. If they say trick-or-treating is more important, we're going to get more trick-or-treating. So I think that's fantastic. By the way, I note that this is a 120-page survey with a whole bunch of other questions around party-specific entertainment, food, character greetings, and then, the attractions you rode and stuff like that. So it goes on, but super detailed survey from the Halloween party here.
Okay.
On to listener questions. On last week's show, show, we mentioned that Floridian Way, the road to the west of the Magic Kingdom, is getting 2 roundabouts as traffic control devices. And Jim Hill, you mentioned the Bourne Bridge Rotary in Cape Cod. Alert listener Jason K happened to be making the drive and had his passenger snap a photo showing the roundabout is still there. And I threw the photo in the show notes. There you go.
Wow.
Look at that.
Okay.
Whoa.
So am I confusing the roundabout at the Sagamore with the one at the Bourne? Or am I just an old fart and not remembering this properly?
Well, yeah. Your words, not ours.
There we go.
Speaking of roundabouts, Sam Clark wrote in to say, as a resident of Hamilton County, Indiana, and nearby Carmel, the self-proclaimed roundabout capital of the world, we love our rotaries. I believe we have 305 in the county right now, with more under construction at intersections at all times. They're so ubiquitous here that when I'm driving and traveling in other parts of the United States, I often curse the regular stop signs and stoplights and long for the efficient traffic flow that we have here at home. Hopefully more municipalities around the United States will adopt them, and it'll be less startling for visitors to Walt Disney World. All right, there we go. Cool. All right. And finally, guys, a mystery, a Walt Disney World mystery. Nick Hafel writes in with a Wide World of Sports mystery. He says, at one time, Walt Disney World was the golf kingdom of the world. And while that's dialed back in recent decades, it seems that right around 2016, a very small golf hole resembling an approach shot was built on the north end of Wide World of Sports right next to Osceola Parkway. The hole wasn't there prior to 2015. Then you can see it under construction in aerial maps. Then you see it finished, complete with a Mickey sand trap. And then just like that, it just disappears. Any thoughts on what this mystery hole was? And I don't know. I looked. I mean, it's definitely there and then not there in the maps. But yeah, was it like a prototype that they were doing for some sort of golf course refurb at the time? Was it a promo thing?
I think the smart thing would be to hammer those years, 2016 or thereabouts. Look to see what ESPN is doing for special programming. Perhaps there was, do you remember when ABC used to do those athletic competitions where Pete Rose would go head to head with Jack Nicklaus, with the notion of different athletes who had different specializations competing in others' fields?
Oh, right. Yeah. So you get like a gymnast and a swimmer to play par 3 golf or something like that. All right.
Yeah. So we'll tell you what, I'll do some research and
thank you.
Nick, let's see what we come up with.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jim. I appreciate that. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, Jim Hill and Jim Shull wrap up the story of the construction challenges that Disney faced when building Cars Land in DCA. We'll be right back.
Good night, itchy eyes. Good night, sudden sneeze. Good night to your symptoms of allergies. Xyzal is the allergy medicine you take before bed. It provides powerful relief while you rest your head. Not just all night, but all the next day. Xyzal keeps working, keeping allergies at bay. And without those annoying symptoms disturbing your rest, you can wake up the next morning feeling your absolute best. Remember, be wise all. Take Xyzal. At night.
New Vitamin Water Zero Sugar Pineapple Passion Fruit is packed with vitamins, just like the amount of peas we packed in that sentence. It's packed like your tote bag, the one you stole from your ex, or your overpriced half a studio apartment, or extra rushed rush hour traffic. Packed like your calendar, triple booked at 5, of course. Grab a Vitamin Water. Did we mention it's packed with vitamins?
This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Psst, healthcare pros, word's out, and it's too good to keep quiet. Look, LinkedIn is revolutionizing job hunting, making it possible to search by specialty, shift preference, and salary. Endless scrolling is out. Whether it's a mental health therapist or dental hygienist, finding the perfect role is faster and easier than ever. Head to linkedin.com/healthcare and start your search today.
And And we're back. All right, Jim, where did we leave off last time?
Well, it only took us 3 shows, Len, because again, there's a lot of backstory when it comes to Cars Land, and but here we're now finally here talking about the actual challenges of building Cars Land out in California in the late 2000s, early 2010s, and we're lucky enough to have Jim Shull here to keep me honest. And let's also circle back to why we started this series, and that is that half-mile long construction fence that circles rivers of America right now, and where Tom Sawyer's Island used to stand in over the next 2.5, 3 years. We're going to see Piston Peak National Park rise up. By the way, Len, is that the timeline you've been hearing as well? I mean, what?
2028?
2028, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, that would be super ambitious. I was thinking more like 2030. But 2028 might be possible for Piston Peak and then maybe 2030 for Villains Land. It would still be ambitious, but they need to do it sooner rather than later to drive attendance. I do know, Jim Hill, that 2028 is also the year the United States is hosting the Olympics. So we're going to get some international tourism there. Also, I don't know if you guys have noticed this lately, but the calendar is not doing Disney any favors with this construction because it's rainy season here in Orlando. And every afternoon, the rivers of America gets rehydrated for the past few weeks. I'm just saying that this is, if this was ancient Greece, management would already be consulting the oracle at Delphi to see what the gods are thinking. But anyway.
Now, what's your take, Mr. Shull? Is, again, 2.5, 3 years, is that realistic for something of size here? And again, we're talking just Piston Peak at this point, not Villains Land.
Well, the whole thing is a Jenga game. You cannot build one piece without another. And the reality is, when I looked at some of the photographs of the draining of rivers, I was impressed and amazed by the 2 cofferdams that you'll see in some of the photographs, which say they didn't drain all of the rivers of America. They only drained the portion that they needed to for this phase of the construction. Now, to answer your question, could they do it? Yeah, they could do it, but the question I would counter with is, do they want to do it? Because what you need is a cadence. You don't want to market everything at once. It's not, hey, come to the buffet because we're going to give you roast beef and more roast beef. You want to be able to say, okay, we've got Tropical America, then we have Cars Land, followed by Villains Land, and followed by whatever's next. They want to find that cadence. And typically, usually it's like 18 months at the minimum, 2 years, that you want to stretch things apart.
It's so interesting you say that because we've just recently learned that Dinosaur the Ride is closing February of next year, 2026. And what's interesting is that there's a number of people online who floated the idea that, well, okay, this is Splash Mountain becomes Tiana's Bayou Adventure again, that it'll be 17, 18 months and, this will be open 2028. And that's honestly not what's going on here because, if you actually look at what's involved with turning Dinosaur the Ride into an East Coast version of the Indiana Jones Adventure, I mean, the ride system's going to stay in place. There's supposedly going to be no changes made to the actual physical track. The show building and back of house are going to stay the same. But, just when you look at, what they're looking to do with the exterior of the low-slung Dino Institute and how that's now supposed to be this ancient Mayan temple that's rising up out of the jungle, coupled with the giant show scenes inside. I mean, again, same thing. Doesn't seem all that likely that this would be ready for 2028, though kind of interesting. There has been some talk lately about how at least the Encanto stuff will be open for late 2027.
So that was my understanding or my hypothesis that, in terms of cadence, we get Encanto in 2027, Indy in 2028, Piston Peak in 2029, and Villains in 2030. Yeah, Jim Shull. When I was at my Mayan archaeology conference in March, where Imagineering presented the Indiana Jones stuff, they had mentioned that although they had done a ton of really great research on it, they had not yet got to the point in the project where they had developed the first physical model of the ride. Does that tell you anything about what the timeline is?
Well, it does and it doesn't. I mean, isn't that a clear answer to you? Yes.
Yes. Also, no.
The reality is you can only control the things you can control. We talked about the main temple out in front. That's easy.
Right.
You go and take a jackhammer to what's there and you start building what you want. What is more problematic is when you go inside and lift the hood on a ride that's now well over 20 years old, and you may have wear and tear and fatigue that you just don't know until you start to go in there and do some serious deconstruction. So that's always going to be the thing that keeps all the construction managers and all the project schedulers awake at night. It's not what they know. It's the things that are hiding under the bed that'll come back to bite them.
Yeah, I mean they've got known unknowns, right? Like we don't know how much asbestos is in this building, and then they've got the unknowns, right?
Yeah, and also the reality is that Indiana Jones, in one way, you can approach it pretty simply. You have this many figures, you have this much artificial foliage, these many lights. You buy that stuff, and they all go and sit in a warehouse until they're ready to be installed. But it's that moment when you install. That's the shifting date. Now, having said that, what we may end up with in tropical America, or where just like New Fantasyland, when they opened that attraction, that mini land, that land within Fantasyland, they didn't open it with one big ta-da moment. Now, they did have the ta-da for the official opening, but along the way, they had multiple soft openings where, Dumbo is open. Well, not both. That one. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, we're getting a phased opening for Tropical Americas, 100%.
Oh, no, sure. No doubt.
We never hear about things, but, in the Tropical America portfolio list of attractions is the carousel, which you never hear about.
Yeah, and that's right at the front of the park, or right at the front of the land. So,
park.
Yeah.
And they're building a little play area for the kids. So there's a lot on their plates.
The one quick question about the internal redo of Dinosaur into Indiana Jones. The story that I heard from Imagineering was hinted strongly that the story would involve water, like lots and lots of water. Like somehow we've disturbed the Mayan god of underworld water. Does adding water effects make the timeline longer than if you were adding traditional effects? Do you have to worry about drainage and mold and stuff like that?
That's a good question. It depends on where you add the water. Now, in Tokyo and in Anaheim, there's the big glory hole scene. If you come across and past Indy, who said, don't go that way, I shouldn't have opened this door, etc., and blah, blah, blah. Then you go down the steps. You come to that one big room. Now, that one big room does exist in Florida, but it's never had the lights on. So it's a pretty, dark, quiet place. They could add the water there, but did they intend to have water when they first built it? Probably not. So therefore, do they have drains? Probably not. Is it special effects water? We don't know. But I'm sure one thing they're going to try to do is the Imagineers are going to try to stomp on any hint that this is just a paint and polish refresh, that they want it to look, when it reopens, as something that's brand purpose-built and new.
Yeah,
so
nice.
But having said that, we're also within the world of an Imagineering that says there are certain attractions, refreshes like the animation courtyard, that's a year. The Muppets redo of Rock and Roller Coaster, that's a year. But some things like Tropical America, that's more than a year. So I think to your point earlier, which is right, look for a phased opening of Tropical America.
Okay.
100%.
Now, that said, though, we're just talking about the things you can plan for and then the things you can't. And, we've just seen, the two biggest examples of this are, of course, Tron Light Cycle Run for Florida, which, again, remember, when that was announced in July of 2017, that was supposed to be the big marquee attraction for 2021 for Walt Disney World's 50th anniversary. Nobody planned for COVID, and what that did, and, that pushed that back till 2023. And if we go even further back, in fact, We just talked about this as part of a Disney Unpacked show when, you know, Test Track was originally supposed to open May of '97, and through nobody's fault, there was an incident, and they had to reprogram all of the control systems for the attraction, and that didn't then open till 22 months behind schedule in '99. Right. So,
don't forget the original Splash Mountain in Anaheim, because of the earthquake back in Southern California, the price of concrete rose astronomically. And even if you had the money, you couldn't get concrete because they were rebuilding Southern California. So again, known and unknowns.
Wow. Okay. Now, speaking of knowns, when we get back from this break, we're now going to talk about the actual challenges that the company faced while building Cars Land out in California. But first, this.
The Hilton sale is on. For 10 days only, you can save up to 20% on stays this fall and beyond. Don't wait. The sale ends September 29th. Book your stay and save at Hilton.com. Terms apply. Hilton, for the stay.
When your investors, customers, and workers demand more from your business, make it happen with SAP. The AI-powered capabilities of SAP can help you streamline costs, connect with new suppliers, and manage payroll, even when your business is being pulled in different directions. To deliver a quality product at a fair price while paying your people what they're worth too, so your business can stay unfazed. Learn more at sap.com/uncertainty.
As a sports fan, I have to confess. Sometimes the game gets kind of boring. That's when I unfold my Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 7 and use multi-window viewing on its large screen. Boring game? I'm checking out my fantasy baseball league at the same time. Score still 1-0? I'm replying to emails in the other window, scoring points with the boss. Semifinals finally getting exciting? I'm buying tickets to the finals and booking my flights. Can your phone do that?
The new Galaxy Z Fold 7. Get yours at Samsung.com.
We're back, and again, we've got Jim Shull with us today to talk about Cars Land. So, all right, this is DCA 2.0. Project gets announced in October of 2007. But, the company's made some decisions that are going to make this especially challenging. Decision number one is to keep DCA open as they reinvent this park.
Yep.
And that takes, that significantly slows down the transformation process. This was 4.5 years, wasn't it, Jim?
It was 4.5 very long years. And I gotta tell you, if you ever had the pleasure of walking through the rat maze, which DCA was back then.
I ran the Disneyland half marathon through that maze.
Yeah, I mean, it was great because the construction walls, the construction wall just moved. I swear it moved. It was not there last week. And there was a whole team of people whose job simply was to maintain and move the construction walls because it was you had to move things around. Oh, we're building here, we're building there. And they had to move all the time. But it was also fun because you get to walk you'd enter the park through the backstage.
You would. It was great. And remember that was largely because the decision was made that the original entrance to DCA, the Sunshine Plaza, very stylized, that wonderful mural and that sort of thing. A decision was made that, well, this is going to be our Main Street equivalent, and we had to create this charming, nostalgic take on, what Los Angeles was like in the early 1920s when, Walt Disney first arrived in Southern California. So Jim's not wrong. The notion of while that was being built, you effectively, mind the dumpster, just again, keep going into the park. But anyway, we're here to talk today about Cars Land, which, kind of interesting. It was at the time the largest rockwork project ever done at a stateside park.
Really?
We're talking about 280,000 square feet of rockwork. Now, mind you, that is not the biggest piece of rockwork that's ever been done at Disney Park. That distinction goes to Mount Prometheus at Tokyo Disney Seas. That's 750,000 square feet of rockwork. And
wow.
And what's also kind of cool about what they did at Tokyo Disney Seas is depending on what part of the park you're in, Mount Prometheus changes to back up that story. I mean, for example, if you're in, what is it, the Volcania, home to the two Jules Verne themed rides, 20,000 Leagues and Journey to the Center of the Earth, that's an active volcano. I mean, it's just craggy, just cooled lava, that sort of thing. Whereas, for example, if you're over in Mediterranean Harbor, you're looking up at a placid, long dormant volcano, barely worth mentioning, except for the 4 times a day it explodes. Just.
I love it.
By the way, that 50-foot ball of fire, that happens because hidden just behind the lip of the caldera there, 10 rocket engines.
Sure. Of course, as one does.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. Jim Hill, who do you source rocket engines from? I mean, I'm thinking you're getting coasters from Vekoma, but are you getting rocket engines from General Dynamics or Raytheon? They have a catalog, a consumer catalog?
Haven't we actually talked about United Technologies?
No, we've never talked about this, and God, I'm so interested.
Mr. Shull, correct me if I'm wrong. They did elevators and rocket engines, right?
Yes, they did. They once upon a time they sponsored the original Living Seas there at Epcot Center.
Yeah. But I mean, do you call them up? Let's say it's United Technologies. You call them up and be like, "Hey, I'm coming out to the warehouse in a couple of weeks. Can you demo some rocket engines for me?" Like what? How do you test these? How do you know that these things are going to work for you?
I do not know what to tell you there. All right. Anyway, back now to Cars Land, which has to reflect. And this is the interesting thing. You're not doing a Mount Prometheus. You're doing something that has to reflect exactly the world that we've seen in Pixar's 2006 release, Cars.
Right. Because Americans have seen the Desert Southwest, and they've seen the movie. They know what it looks like, right? Okay.
And one of the more interesting design aspects of the Ornament Valley, where Radiator Springs is set, is that the mountain range in the back, the Cadillac Range, is actually based on the Cadillac Ranch. Len, have you ever seen this in person, the thing at Amarillo, Texas?
In Amarillo. Yeah. So it's funny. We drove out to Amarillo. We stopped at the Big Texan Steak Ranch. I ate my body weight in steak. And then we were driving past this sort of at dusk. And honest to God, I thought I was having the meat sweats. I thought it was a hallucination. And I'm like, I turned to my brother because my dad's driving. And I turned to my brother. I'm like, "You see that, right?" And he's like, "Yeah, I see it." Okay, fine.
And Jim, Tracy has family out there. Have you ever been to this thing?
Oh, many times. It's like you can't have a family event without being in that center of the country. And hey, let's go eat our body weight in steak and go look at some Cadillacs stuck in the desert ground. Yeah, it's
sure.
And what else do you do in Texas?
Exactly.
But again, for those of you who've never been to this is something that was set up in 74. It's literally 10 classic Cadillacs from 49 to 63, back when they had big fins, buried partially in the ground, fins up at 60-degree angle, and it has since become this icon right off of Route 66. But anyway, they needed this for Cars Land in California because, of course, people had seen it in the films. But as Mr. Shull will explain here, there was a secondary reason they needed to have this as the backdrop for Cars Land. And Jim, let's talk about when DCA was first built, and a decision was made that this is going to be a park without a berm.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you to the city of Anaheim for disclosure of public documents. Disneyland California had a very special caveat and agreement with the city of Anaheim, which is that there's a cone. If you stand in the castle, just behind the castle, you'll see a little plaque saying, from this point forward, here's a visual intrusion dome, which meant in reality that nothing could be higher that would penetrate into the dome, which means you couldn't be standing on Main Street and look at a gas station or a hotel or a convention center or whatever. But the rules did not apply in the same way to DCA. They had districts, not lands. They did not have a visual intrusion cone. So when the time came for the Imagineers to develop and design Cars Land, the Cadillac range was not just something that was important because it was in the movie. It was also basically a visual wall that could separate people in the park from the outside ugliness of Anaheim.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So it served a purpose.
So Jim Shull, how do you don't just build it and then see that it works, right? How does that happen?
Well, a couple of ways. First of all, you do a lot of documentation. You take the reference from the movie and you apply it to the area that you have. Now, you want to develop as much of the land for ride shows and attractions as you can in Cars Land. Mountains, that we know, tend to be tall, but they also tend to be wide. But the width is not an issue, not an available option there in Anaheim. So as a result, they started to do a bas relief, effectively very, very thin mountains that were attached to structural steel. And you can see that steel if you go on the backside, outside of DCA, standing on Harbor Boulevard, and look back, you can see the structural steel. But that doesn't help the problem because, as I just said, these mountains are not wide. But you have to create depth. And that's where our friend paint comes in. So you start to selectively apply paint to the concrete of the mountain to create a forced perspective.
It's interesting that Jim brings that up because I got to speak with Zolt, the gentleman who actually sculpted the mountains. And in fact,
he's famous. Yeah.
Well, I remember standing there in the outdoor cafe at Flo's, and Zolt walked me through the fact that, for example, if you look at the Cadillac mountain range at the back of Radiator Springs, I want to say there's a very strong gray for the centralmost mountain, but to either side, as you're supposed to be fading into the distance, the color palette changes to sell you on the notion of that one's further away than that one, and that one's further away from that one.
That's clever.
On the other hand, Kathy Mangum, am I pronouncing that name right, Jim? Mangum. Okay. Again, got to interview her while Cars Land was being built. And what was fascinating is Kathy was talking about the lessons that had been learned from the Matterhorn. And how every 2 years they have to send painters up the side of this building to effectively repaint the mountain, make it look, because again, Southern California's sun beating down on this, the paint fades, so the grays get less gray, the snowfields get less white. And so, and Kathy, when we're standing there talking, Cars Land is still under construction, and there's 12 layers of scaffolding going up the Cadillac mountain range. And she just flat out told me, it's like, look, we don't want to come back here in 2 years. In fact, we want to have to only come back in here, say, every decade, every 15 years. So, for example, they were using, when they were doing the Cadillac mountain range, they were doing paint with ground glass in it, that would hold color for longer.
Oh, so the ground glass is colored, basically like a larger grain glitter.
They also For example, when you look up the mountainside and you see what looks like a cactus or a bush or that sort of thing, that's, first of all, not real greenery. That's actually sculpted metal with color mixed into the metal.
Really? And they have to have done this too for like Pandora, because I've never seen a paint crew on the mountain. Okay, that makes sense. Okay,
to bring this full circle here, because remember, we started talking about this topic because of Piston Peak, National Park coming to Walt Disney World. Now, here's the interesting thing. As it's been explained to me, again, Piston Peak, and in fact, I think, Len, you talked about the cadence 28, 29, something to that effect. Realistically, Cars Land opened in June of 2012.
So coming up on 15 years.
There we go. And supposedly, on the heels of when Avengers Infinity Defense, when that opens at DCA, the belief is, okay, we'll have a brand new attraction that, as Mr. Shull likes to say, drives intent to visit. And so when you have something like that opens, people will come to the park to see that. So that will then give DCA the opportunity to shut down Radiator Springs for...
big refurb. Okay. Oh, yeah. So assuming they're roughly the same capacity, the same ride duration, and stuff like that, they will temporarily be flat on attendance when they open a new attraction. But eventually, when Radiator Springs reopens, that's when you get the bump in capacity.
There we go.
That makes sense.
Though to bring things full circle here, Jim, you and I have talked previously about what's kind of interesting about when Avengers Infinity Defense opens at Avengers Campus, because in a weird sort of way, this giant show building is going to do what the Cadillac Range does over at Radiator Springs, right?
Well, yeah, it's going to be plugging a hole. Because right now, today, what was interesting is when they tore down the fence to start the construction work for Avengers Campus expansion, you could suddenly see all the beautiful 7-Eleven and which is directly on the other side of the street, and the water tower and all that goodness. So people who say, well, that's a really big building there that they're building at Avengers Campus. No, you have the imaginers saying, could you make it bigger? Can you,
and wider,
and wider. Make the outside go away. So big brutalism architecture can be your friend.
So Jim Hill, quick question here. So if Cars Land is coming up on 15 years old, and we've got similar kinds of rock work happening at Piston Peak in the Magic Kingdom, I imagine you've got a small number of specialists within Imagineering who know how to do this kind of rock work. What's the cadence for the scheduling of those? Are they like basically going from Cars Land to the Magic Kingdom working on, or is it are the opposite way? Like, is it the same team that's going to be doing both, and they're just going to be busy for the next couple of years?
That's the fascinating little bend on this story. I mean, dependent on when, face it, what's interesting is your painters don't typically come in till after, your steel is up, and then your cages that, you then lay lathe and that sort of thing on the rock work on. So what's interesting is the folks who work in that discipline and Imagineering have basically been told, you're going to be in Anaheim or Orlando. We don't know yet.
For 18 months, and we're not sure we're not sure about which 18 months. We're not sure about where, but just put this in your schedule. Sure, that makes sense.
There we go.
That is amazing.
And and one final note here, because I think. Mr. Shull, you've seen the art that's out there so far for Avengers Infinity Defense, and you were actually, sort of leaning into, we know this ride system, right? In fact, it was part of Fantasy Springs, supposedly?
Well, yeah, it sure does look like it. When you and I were at D23 just last year, Disney Imagineers shared the maquette for the ride vehicle, which, when you pull off the theming, it looks exactly like the Peter Pan adventure. There at Fantasy Springs. So I think as we look at the building come up out of the ground, as we look at what Disney Imagineers shared with us, it looks like the West Coast is going to get the same ride system that premiered for Disney in Japan. Which actually makes a lot of sense, because if you think of it, Disney's always thinking about how to get capacity and how do you get that Venn diagram. The Tower of Terror, their version, is the thrill ride. They really need a family, high capacity, family friendly thrill ride or thrilling ride. And if they go this direction of using that ride system, they'll certainly be getting that. So.
Well, and just one final note here. If it's the same ride system, Peter Pan's Neverland Adventure in Tokyo, it's 6-minute long experience. So that's a long time to hang out with the Avengers.
Yeah, 6 minutes would be the upper limit of what I think a modern action-based Disney ride would be. I think 7 I think is the absolute limit. Even then, you start to think like, that's going to be a little long. So 6 is interesting. So Jim Shull, you mentioned the thing about family friendly. Let me ask you this question. We've only seen or only heard from Disney about one attraction going into Piston Peak, and that's the Cars ride itself. But it seems like we should, it feels like there should be 2.
Well, they did say, they didn't say what the second one would be, but a couple of times now they have said, we're going to build the Piston Peak ride and something else.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we don't, okay.
And in the original artwork, it showed the something else. And in the new Fun Map version of the art, it shows something else. But what the something else is in that little bitty space, we do not know yet. So it's a case of, check your Magic 8 Ball and watch this space.
Fair enough.
So anyway, folks, there we go. It only took 4 shows, but we finally got to the challenges that were the company faced with Cars Land, and again. The project was announced October of 2007. Didn't break ground till 2009, the Cars Land portion. And not to belabor the obvious here, but what is it? Cars, the Radiator Springs Racers supposedly cost $200 million to build. So it'll be intriguing to see if Piston Peak it is in that same ballpark, but we'll have to wait till 2008, 2009 to find out.
Fair enough. All right, folks, that's going to do it for the show today. You can help support our show by subscribing over at patreon.com/Jim Hill Media, where we're posting exclusive shows every week. Our latest show is on the history of Test Track 1, 2, and 3, and there's a link in the show notes.
Speaking of plugs for shows, and Mr. Shull's not going to do this, so I am. If you go over to Disney Journey this week, his YouTube show, Mr. Shull is going to be talking about, water parks, not just Blizzard Beach and Typhoon Lagoon, the ones we got in Florida, but also the one that we almost got at Disneyland Paris, Lava Lagoon.
Fantastic. I have a link to Jim Shull's Disney Journey channel on YouTube in the show notes as well. And on next week's show, Jim Shull returns on the anniversary of the Magic Kingdom's opening in 1971 to tell us what it's like in a Disney theme park for the 48 hours before its opening day. Listeners, you're advised to have caffeine, sweat, and silicone call candy for the complete I Was There experience. You can find more of Jim at jimhillmedia.com and more of me, Len at touringplans.com. Jim Shull, where can people find more of you?
Well, they can find me hanging out on Disney Journey on YouTube and at jimhshull.com for everything else.
Fantastic. We're produced spectacularly by Eric Kersey and David Gray. He'll be bringing fireworks, homemade corn liquor, and Leonard Skinner's self-titled first album to the 2025 Gaucher Mullet and Music Festival on Saturday, October 18th, 2025 at the Singing River Mall. That's on Highway 90 in beautiful downtown Gaucher, Mississippi. While Eric and David are doing that, please go into iTunes and rate our show and tell us what you'd like to hear next. For Jim and Jim, this is Len. We will see you on the next show.